All right, hey gang, this is the Fantasy Sports Boss. Welcome to the impromptu live stream. Let me just turn this camera here so we don't have that light. There we go. That's much better. All right, good morning. I should say good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. This is the Fantasy Sports Boss with a live stream. I wanted to get on there. I haven't done a live stream in a really long time, so probably a lot of you are going to be watching this on replay since I just decided on a whim to come on here. But I know I touched on it earlier today with the wrap-up video of the Bills-Broncos game, but I'm still, beyond disgusted. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm still beyond disgusted by what took place at the end of that Bills-Broncos game. The fact that that game was decided by two bogus pass interference calls. The second one on Tre'Davious White, and I don't blame him for losing his shit on the referee. Probably going to get fined for that. But again, just an absolute disgrace that a terrific game, a game that held the attention of the audience throughout, unlike last night with Seattle and San Francisco. But for that game to end, really what due to that pass interference call on Tre'Davious White is an absolute disgrace. And the NFL, you could say it's apples to oranges, the NHL to the NFL, but in the NHL, you see it all the time. These referees swallow their whistle in the third period, and certainly during overtime, sudden death overtime in the playoffs. And these referees really need to use discretion unless it's obvious. And that one had some leeway to it. Like I said, if he yanked his jersey and pulled him down before the ball even got to them, then yes, you call the pass interference. But to call it there when it really wasn't that egregious, and you set up the Broncos for basically a chip shot field goal. That was complete garbage. It's just an awful way to end what was a great game. And then, of course, you find out afterwards, and I'm a huge fan of him. You know that Bo Nix fractures his ankle. So now the NFL is going to get Jarrett Stidham possibly against CJ Stroud next week. Serves them right. Serves the NFL right for this garbage that took place at the end of this game. And again, let them decide it. I'm not saying the Bills would have won the game. That's not what I'm saying. But there was certainly a chance that all things being equal, Josh Allen would be playing next week. And certainly the league would much prefer that than to have Jarrett Stidham starting against CJ Stroud, or hopefully it's Drake May. It's wide open now for those two teams to get to the Super Bowl. And I don't blame Sean McDermott, and certainly he's going to take some heat. And Josh Allen, you can't, listen, he didn't turn the ball over. I believe the 5 previous playoff games he played, he had 5 in this one. It was, he certainly bears a lot of responsibility for what happened in this game. There's no question about it. But I think that, the fact that the referees basically decided this game, to me, is complete and utter garbage. No doubt about it. So, and that it just sucks that we're not going to see Josh Allen next week. Would love to have seen him going against Drake May or against that Houston defense, but instead we got Jarrett Stidham. Can the Broncos win this game? They could, right? I mean, certainly I could see them hanging in there better against the Texans, because that's not an offense that lights up the scoreboard. But New England, I think, is in the driver's seat to get there. And this is going to be a weather event later for the Patriots and the Texans. They're expecting snow. I'm in New York. I can tell you it's been snowing all morning. And the second phase of this storm is supposed to really kick up, after 3, 4 o'clock Eastern. And then certainly for the Patriots game there. My thoughts on these two games. It's going to be tough for the Rams, I think, in this frozen weather. We've heard, Matthew Stafford's 1-9 in bad weather games. Certainly their offense is potent, but the Chicago Bears are just playing with a chip on their shoulder. And Caleb Williams, who I do like a lot in fantasy, has been very clutch. And say what you will about Caleb Williams, he's a little bit a little bit out there. He's got some Aaron Rodgers in him. He's got that, I don't give an F attitude, and he's a little out there. He's different. Doesn't toe the line, if you will. But he's been playing well. He's getting the job done. And certainly next year for fantasy, I've already told you guys, I'm completely in on Caleb Williams. And, certainly from a fantasy perspective, the quarterback position, and I've said this 8,000 times since the season ended, it has to be all about the value at quarterback next year. All right. That's it. You want to chase Josh Allen? It's going to be a mistake. All right. It's definitely going to be a mistake. So I know in the 3 finals I was in this year, out of the 6 teams, Allen was on one of them, and it was mine, and only because I traded for him in the middle of the season. Right. So, again, next year, avoid, if it's a single quarterback league, avoid Josh Allen, avoid Drake May, avoid Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, all the way through probably Jackson Dart, because I think Jackson Dart is going to be the wise guy quarterback. All right. I think Jackson Dart is going to be the guy that everybody wants. Full season under John Harbaugh. He ran at will last year, throwing and running the football in. So I think Jackson Dart is going to be that wise guy. I could see him getting drafted ahead of Jalen Hurts, especially if the tush push gets banned, which I think it will. I could see him getting drafted ahead of Joe Burrow. I certainly would take Joe Burrow over Jackson Dart. You can have that conversation with Jalen Hurts. I'm not a big Jalen Hurts guy. But to me, I have Dart ranked number 7. I have Justin Herbert number 8. But for me, Trevor Lawrence, I have at 9, Caleb Williams at 10, Dak Prescott 11, Bo Nix at 12, and Brock Purdy at 13. That is the sweet spot for drafting your quarterback this year. I don't think there's any question about it. Now, just briefly about the running backs. It was really the way to go this year in terms of using early round picks on the running back. They've been unbelievably the more stable injury wise of the between running backs and wide receivers. I think that certainly going the running back route early again this year is fine. But there's a lot of landmines. All right, there's certainly a lot of landmines that you got to be aware of for next season, starting with Christian McCaffrey. We've already talked about Christian McCaffrey, how he blew away the 375 touch rule. So he's set up to be another scary investment. Saquon Barkley last year, coming into this past season, he was a big violator, almost 500. I think he did have 500 touches in 2024, and we saw how bad he was running back 14 this year. Just didn't have the legs. And that's what happens to these backs when they take on such a heavy workload. They just can't bounce back the next season. And that's what we saw with Saquon Barkley. Same thing applies for Christian McCaffrey. Now, I invested in him this year. I had him in one of my leagues, and I actually won the league. It was the right year to invest in him this year because he missed so much time in 2024 when, again, he succumbed to the 375 touch rule. So, Derrick Henry, when he violated the 375 touch rule a number of years ago, he got hurt. So this is a tried and true formula. All right. So McCaffrey, who on numbers alone, he was a fantasy MVP. There's no doubt about it in my mind for 2025. On numbers alone, he could be the number 1 draft pick. And I don't think anybody would have any would question that. But to me, it's Bijan Robinson. He's the number 1 guy. I don't, he's been very durable. He does the run, catch combo at a very high rate. And so for me, running backs, wide receivers, those 2 positions are going to be the one I'm going to hit very heavily, the initial 5-6 rounds of the draft. And then I'm going to take my quarterback from that list that I told you about. Your Caleb Williams, your Dak Prescott, your Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy. I'm taking a quarterback from that group. And then tight end. Tight end is really weird for next season. If you really look at it, you really got to trust these young guys because Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren and Harold Fannin, those are going to be the guys that are going to be the ones that are going to be getting a lot of attention early at the position there. And I'd be a little bit leery of using a high pick on them. Let me pull up my tight end rankings because the tight end is going to be a little, and again, do you want to use a late first round, early second on Trey McBride? He's going to be fantastic, no doubt about it. Though, I don't think they're going to have as much garbage time as they did this past season. B, it's very, very, and I think McBride was only the fifth tight end to ever average 18 PPR a game, and that's why he was such a big difference maker. It's very hard for tight ends to justify a first round draft because they would have to average 18 plus in PPR, which McBride did last year, but I don't think it's going to happen this year because they're not going to be as behind as much. Does Kyler Murray start again for them? I don't know. That would hurt him. But Colston Loveland, who I love and the whole fantasy football community loves, he's going to be the guy that everybody's going to want. So his price is going to go probably higher than it should be. So, all right, let me get my tight ends, because when I was looking at tight ends, it really was a tough list for me. In terms of the early guys, once you get past, Trey McBride and Brock Bowers, who I'm not going to own in any leagues because I'm not using a first or a second round pick on a tight end. Then you have the Tyler Warren. Then you have the Colston Loveland. Then you have the Harold Fannin. And honestly, you're probably better off going for the cheapest of the three because any of those three could be the top scorer over the other two. Then you have George Kittle. And I said this morning that, whether it was Isaiah Likely with Mark Andrews, I said that for this season, that was the rare handcuff that you could get at the tight end position. You could do that with the 49ers next year. George Kittle's not going to start the season on time with his torn Achilles, but Jake Tonjes, who was big last night until he got hurt, and he's been very, very good, major touchdown guy whenever he plays for George Kittle, that could be a handcuff situation you could use there. Isaiah Likely, could he end up with the Kansas City Chiefs? Travis Kelce's probably going to retire. That would be a very attractive. Could you imagine Isaiah Likely on the Chiefs? He'd be a top 6 guy, no questions asked. He would shoot right to that top 6 range if he signs with the Chiefs. And that's why free agency is going to be such a big thing with these tight ends for 2026. So, it's going to be interesting to see there. Which tight end. And honestly, I really like Colston Loveland, but they're going to have Luther Burden. They're going to have Roma Dunze. Is Cole Kmet's going to still be there? It may not be. I think he's going to get overdrafted because everybody saw how big of a finish he had. And I think he's going to wind up getting a little bit overdrafted. Here's my tight ends. So right now I have the top tier is obviously Trey McBride and Brock Bowers. And then the next tier I have Tucker Kraft, coming back from a very serious knee injury, Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, Kyle Pitts, and Harold Fannin in that order. So that's 7 right there. To me, I wouldn't be excited. Tucker Kraft could be a third tight end off the board. Does he really deserve that? Can't you see Colston Loveland finishing as tight end 3? Can you see Tyler Warren? Can you see Kyle Pitts, Harold Fannin as a tight end 3? You could say yes to all of them. So out of those guys, Kraft, Loveland, Warren, Pitts, and Fannin, who I think are all comparable, take the cheapest one because all 5 of those guys could finish tight end 3 behind Bowers and McBride. And then I have a line to tier 3, which starts with Sam Laporta and George Kittle. Oronde Gadsden's in that group. Dalton Kincaid is in that group. Dalton Schultz is in that group. All right. And then tier 4, I got Jake Ferguson, Mark Andrews, Juwan Johnson, Dallas Goedert. Those guys there. So for me, since I'm not taking McBride and Bowers, I'll take one. I'll probably wind up maybe looking at one of these next, 5 guys that I talked about: Kraft, Loveland, Warren, Pitts, or Fannin. I'm very curious what Kyle Pitts is. He going back to Atlanta? Is he going to go to the Chiefs? Could you imagine Kyle Pitts on the Chiefs? If he goes to the Chiefs, he's tight end 3. He had a huge year last year. This is the Kyle Pitts that went. The reason why he went in the first round coming out of Florida. And how good he was as a rookie. 1,000 yards. But in that tier 3, George Kittle, do you want to back him with Jake Tonjes? You could do that. Do you want to have 2 tight ends in your roster? It's not optimal usage of your bench. Sam Laporta, I like Sam Laporta's value. He has slipped so far now that he's a big value, right? He disappointed the last 2 years. There's no question after that unbelievable rookie debut. He's disappointed the last 2 years. So he's now a value to me because he's going to slip. He's going to be behind those top 7 we talked about. Maybe tight end 8 there. Oronde Gadsden, nice year last year. No Keenan Allen. I'm in on him. I like him a lot. Dalton Kincaid and Dalton Schultz. those are the guys you just, if you really, really wait late for your tight end. If you're in a 12-team league, the last two guys to draft a tight end are going to take Kincaid or Schultz. All right, I think they're better than Ferguson and Andrews in terms of consistency. Maybe somebody takes Dallas Goedert. I don't know. But for me, tight end, if I'm failing to get one of those, and I'm not going to take Tucker Kraft. I don't know. I think they spread it around too much. It's a run-heavy offense. I'll be fine with Loveland, Warren, Pitts, or Harold Fannin. Failing to get one of them, then I would look at Laporta or Rondé Gadsden. And maybe if I have to, that tight end combination of George Kittle with Jake Tonjes. So, so that's how I looked at it. I'm going to have a lot of stuff on the NFL draft. We've already seen, Fernando Mendoza is going to be the number one pick. He's giving off Joe Burrow vibes. I've said that a number of times. Joe Burrow came out of nowhere to post that unbelievable season with LSU. Certainly helped throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. That's what Fernando Mendoza is doing right now for Indiana. So he's going to be the locked and loaded first-round pick. And not a bad place to end up with Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers, but they really got to get that line going. I told you I do like Jeanty as a second-round pick, and he will be a second-round pick this year, and I think that's good value for a guy who caught over 50 passes and almost ran for 1,000 yards behind the worst offensive line in football. So, there's no question how talented he is. And then you have Dante Moore pulling out of the draft. So now the Jets are going to take the best player. In my opinion, it's Arvell Reese at number 2. Do they go Caleb Downs? Do they go, Carnell Tate? I don't think so. I think he's going to the Giants at 5. I've locked in those first 2, and I'm going to keep adding to the locked in players. And I'm going to do a full mock. I'm going to get a full mock out there, and I'm going to keep updating that as we go along. And make sure, guys, you're using that message board. I'm really trying to get that message board going this year. I didn't use it much the first couple of years of the channel, but that's going to be a big part of the channel going forward. And again, feel free to post whatever you want as long as it's clean. Please, no, if you try to avoid the language and, stuff like that, and no politics, none of that stuff. Just keep it to fantasy football. Feel free to use the post message board and post what you want. Get a conversation going, and then we can have a further discussion on there as well. There's going to be a lot of stuff, big stuff coming on with this channel. So we got it all covered throughout the off season too. A lot of fantasy channels take the winter off. We're not going to do that. It's going to be heavy NFL draft. We're going to cover the Senior Bowl in Mobile. We're going to cover the Combine. We're going to cover all of it. Obviously, the NFL draft, free agency. I'm going to have free agency previews probably starting this week. Looking at the positions of the quarterbacks first that are free agents, how that could shape things. Also, the coaching carousel continues to spin with John Harbaugh going to the Giants. I'm ecstatic about that as a Giant fan. Maybe they'll finally get out of this awful rut they've been in. You have Kevin Stefanski now going to Atlanta. I think that's a really good hire there. So we'll get into all of that. We got to look at the new coordinators. Certainly, we've seen the struggles with new coordinators being in over their head, like in Philadelphia, ruining the offense, free agency trades, all that stuff. So make sure you have that subscribe button hit. You also have that notification bell, because when I jump on and do lives like this, and I'm going to do a lot of them during the off season, it's hard to do live streams during the season because so much is going on, but more relaxed off season, I'll be getting more conversations going here through the live streams, maybe once a week. So make sure you tune in for that as well. I'll be doing some podcasts, all of those things. So make sure, like I said, you are a subscriber. There's never any reason to leave the channel during the off season, because like I said, we're going to have everything covered going forward. So I am looking forward to these games today. I'll have a wrap up on them tomorrow, and we'll go from there. All right, guys. So again, just a small stream this morning. I wanted to say hi. And like I said, most of you are probably going to watch this on replay. But again, hit that subscribe button and we'll chat soon. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the games.